We're giving everybody just a moment or so to catch up, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Glad to have you with us. Just about to start. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mentors Roundtable presented by Ohio First. My name is Jean-Dar Bradshaw. I'll be your host tonight. My wingman tonight, the incomparable Andy Yante, Senior Mentor for Ohio, and of course, monitoring tonight's progress from our Mission Control Center in Minnesota is Susan Lawrence. So we've got a great show lined up for you, and we can't wait to get started. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those of you mentors out there who are joining us from outside the Buckeye State, whose teams regularly attend one or both of Ohio's two FRC regional tournaments. And we'd also like to welcome those mentors from our sister program, the First Tech Challenge, who will also be joining us this evening. Speaking on behalf of all of us here at Ohio First, we are thrilled to have you with us, and we look forward to your input. In fact, we'd like to know who's watching tonight. So if you haven't already done so, please take a moment, open up the chat, and then take a moment to enter your name, your team number, your team's hometown, and the first program that you're affiliated with. That way we can better understand our reach, and we can develop specific programs to better meet your needs. Now, this evening, we've got a great show, as I mentioned before. Some wonderful folks that we've got, some wonderful folks that are joining us as well, and we are so excited to have them here. On our agenda for this evening, we've got Renee Becker-Blau from Indiana First. She'll be joining us to talk about the fundraising toolkit and how teams can utilize it to minimize their funding potential. And in our brainstorming session, we'll be talking about ways that teams can stay connected and also stay engaged, including hosting a virtual scrimmage that could take the place of many of the off-season events here in Ohio that were planned and had to be later canceled. We'll wrap up tonight's meeting with a roundtable discussion on opportunities for collaboration. That's on a local, a statewide, and even across the entire WOW district. There's a lot to dig into, so why don't we go ahead and get started. I think I'm a second behind. Hang on, folks, we'll get there. Now, we all recognize that funding is key in having a successful first program and a great and successful season. Between registration, travel, hotel accommodations, teams can really spend a small fortune every season. And that doesn't even count all the pizza parties and all of the coffee and soda that it takes to get through those late night planning meetings and also those impromptu build sessions. Now, in prior meetings, the majority of our participants have voiced concerns about possible funding shortfalls for the upcoming season. Many of our sponsors took a financial hit during the forced closures caused by COVID-19 and are reevaluating what amount, if any, they can afford to support our teams. Well, we want you to know that we took your concerns to heart, and we've gone directly to the experts. In fact, we brought in an expert to help us better understand the many useful resources that are inside the First Fundraising Toolkit. Tonight's featured speaker has been involved with First Robotics since 2003. She began as a student member of FRC Team 1675, that's UPS, the Ultimate Protection Squad out of Wisconsin. Now, of course, after graduation, she continued her involvement in college by founding Go First, a First alumni student group, and served as its president and directed the program for 3 years. She was instrumental in developing the First Fundraising Toolkit and has served as the Toolkit coordinator for the past 7 years. Please join me in welcoming from First Indiana, the president of First Indiana Robotics, Ms. Renee Becker-Blau.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for reaching out and getting connected. I am going to share my screen so I can show the fundraising toolkit. And so we can kind of go over some of the resources that are here and available to the teams. So I definitely hear your concerns as it relates to COVID. Let's see. Can you guys see the fundraising toolkit breakdown?
Starting to come up.
All right, exciting. So you can tell, so when I go through the fundraising toolkit, normally I spend a lot of time kind of breaking down each of the different sections. And I think what you need to you hear and what we need to focus on today is more about the place that you're coming from when you ask donors for engagement. And so there are a lot of resources in the fundraising toolkit, and we'll touch on those momentarily. But I also want to make sure that we're talking about and sharing the reasons, that you have a team. The students that you have on your robotics program, we know how talented they are. And it's the students and the impact this program has on students that we really want to make sure is getting out there to these donors. So I wanted to start with just putting a little plug in for a TED Talk for you guys to take a look at called How Great Leaders Inspire Action, because one of the greatest successes that First Indiana Robotics had when we started, talking to donors and engaging with the program is flipping around the what we do, which is, working with these students. They build robots. They have 6 weeks to build, now a little bit more. Or in the FTC program, it's an iterative design process with 3D printing. Instead of starting with that what, we flipped it around and we started explaining why we do what we do. And so for First Indiana Robotics, we really worked with the First Headquarters mission and branding and started focusing on this concept of our futures built better together. And with everything going on with COVID and the wildfires in Australia and murder hornets out in Oregon and all of those different interesting pieces that have been happening in our world, I think that concept and starting with that concept as why you're doing what you're doing is really critical and important. And so with that in mind, I think it's incredibly valuable for every single team to make sure that they understand who they are and what they do. And so with that, we're going to get into the fundraising toolkit and how you can make sure that you are assessing your community properly. Because I think at this point, one of the most important pieces associated with this fundraising toolkit is really focused around the community analysis and your team documentation. So looking at the fundraising toolkit.
Renee, I'm gonna ask a quick. We're seeing a spreadsheet, so you might be sharing the wrong screen. So I'm gonna give you a quick.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
It's a great looking spreadsheet, though. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's getting recorded. So amazing.
Well,
All
I
right,
was waiting. I was waiting for the right spot to stop. So.
Oh man, I'm really good at just, just keeping going. Huh. I don't know if it'll let me. All right, we'll try sharing screen too. Hopefully this looks a little bit more like the fundraising toolkit.
Oh, cool.
Good.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So focusing on the fundraising toolkit, we've gone to first, I go to Google. Sorry, Susan, but I go to.
No. That's the only way I find anything.
I go to
Worry.
Google and I Google first fundraising toolkit, and that's how I find this page. It is under the first resource library. I suppose I should direct it to that. But what's important to note is that there are examples of fundraising plans from both urban, rural, and suburban teams that you can kind of look at for examples and options. And so, and actually it's from teams literally from Minnesota to Indiana and Wisconsin, Illinois. And so, definitely a variety there, but the fundraising plan examples were essentially created to make sure that teams could start brainstorming around what makes your team unique, regardless of the location you're based in. So that's first in the fundraising plan, is really like understanding your organization, what your strengths are. So that has, these pieces of like the SWOT analysis that are part of a standard, fundraising and business plan. But then it includes other things like identifying what mentor support is needed. That is an excellent way to engage companies and businesses, in addition to focusing on what is in your community. And so again, going back to this community analysis piece, which I think is really critical, one of the resources here that is incredibly valuable, and I would really encourage you all to take a look at, is the community analysis database. And so it's essentially a database of partnerships that's been created. And you can actually, it's still a live Google document. You can go to file, make your own copy, but then what this allows you to do is essentially has a database where you are able to identify, and not you, your students are able to work together to identify different companies in your area, put down information regarding the company, but then you can also begin the process of reaching out to them, identifying contact, and this tracks all of your different engagements. And you can adjust this as you need, but it's incredibly important as we're entering this new stage of the world to make sure that you're organized. And so this is a tool that can allow you to do that. And so when I'm looking at a community, and I'd love if you earlier today, John Dar, you talked about everyone putting their name and information in the spreadsheet. And so if there was a random town that you could help me identify in Ohio, I'd love to kind of show you what I mean when you can do a community analysis. So you don't need to tell me who it is, just, one city or town in Ohio, and we can do some Google map searching.
Cool. How about Girard, Ohio?
Yes, if you spell it.
Help me out.
Girard.
It's Girard.
Don't worry, Google got me. We're good to go.
Well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's sad news. So if I go to Google Maps, so typically that's where I start. I want to understand and kind of find out, okay, this is the breakdown of the city and this area here. So we're going to zoom out a little bit. Fantastic. I now have it on Google Maps. Super easy to use. I love it. So now that I'm here, I'm going to go to search because it generally keeps me within this area. And I'm going to look around here for, let's start with manufacturing. And I'm starting with manufacturing because my hope is that thinking about COVID and the impacts of the community, there will be opportunities where there will be manufacturing companies who have been hopefully thriving in this environment versus some of the other organizations like event planning businesses that are probably not. And so if you take a look here, you can see that there are manufacturers, there are organizations, even a little bit outside of kind of the area that we were looking at originally, all related to manufacturing. And so when you click on this information, you are able to kind of drill down and find out more about these organizations. And so that's kind of the first step, is when you sit down with your students, because again, this should be a whole team effort. You can have every single one of them type in the location, the city that you are all based in, and have them start Googling words, related to industry. So things like manufacturing, Chamber of Commerce is another great website to take a look at. So if we Google Chamber of Commerce, let's see, we have Youngstown / Warren Regional Chamber. There's a couple different ones. So we can click on it, find out more about who's part of that Chamber of Commerce. There's a whole website. And so this is how you can start diving down and getting into some additional research, contacts. And so that's how you can do that with the students, like literally sitting at a meeting, or all, separately in a virtual Zoom meeting, contributing to a single sponsored database, finding the information, identifying those pieces, reaching out to teams. So, and again, it's important to do this community analysis so you can kind of understand what's happening in your area. You can also take a look at Wikipedia. I know that we never recommend students to do that in terms of finding out the history of your city. However, Wikipedia does typically tell you some information about the type of industry in your area, who's been around for a long time. And if you go to your Chamber of Commerce website, you can also figure out what sort of large employers are in the area, or even smaller employers who might take up a large portion of your local economy. And so this type of research and breakdown is essential to getting a good basis in terms of fundraising. If you don't understand what's around you, you're kind of throwing darts without a target. All right, so this is one way where, if students are like, I'm a freshman and I know nobody in my community, how can I contribute? This is one way they can do that. What typically works a little bit better is when you are able to leverage your network. And so what that means is it's not just your network. Again, I am not saying that you as a mentor need to sit there and be the one who is, reaching out to these companies, or be all alone and trying to raise $200,000 just to go to your regional event. I'm saying that this is a team effort, and all of the students, parents, community needs to engage with it. And so, that could involve chatting with, parents or mentors over dinner, identifying contacts people have. Is a student's aunt associated with a local company in the area that could be interested in donating to your team? That'd be great to know. And so as the students are kind of going through this fundraising process, and you have this database of company names, the students can go to their parents, their family members, and start asking, hey, my mentors, we're trying to make sure our team is able to compete. We're building the future generation of problem solvers. We're getting all of these amazing hands-on mentoring opportunities. We're learning these great skills. We have these core values. How do we, who do we know, parents, that could potentially help us? And so when you kind of start asking those questions, that's another great spot to go. And frankly, sitting down with your local mayor, maybe not right now, but maybe scheduling something out in a few weeks or a month or so is also a great way just to find out, what's coming into town. Are there any large companies coming into this area? Or even identifying what problems are occurring, and how can the team help solve those problems? And maybe that could create some sort of ongoing fundraiser that the team would be able to benefit from. In Michigan City area, just local to Indiana, there was a team that created a 3D printed part and saved a local water company, like a water purification company, thousands of dollars. Previously, those parts had been built out of a metal that was very expensive to machine. And by doing this one switch, the team and these students saved this company money, and the company invested back into the team because of that support. And so they kind of generated this ongoing partnership, all related to solving problems in the community. And if that isn't a great example of exactly what FIRST is about, I don't know what would be. So, asking these questions, who isn't involved that should be involved with FIRST? You can look at the legislative, context in your area and say, hey, if you are looking for workforce development, these students are your future workforce. If if you have people in your area who are more interested towards education, you can explain these are hands-on educational learning opportunities. So those are different ways to also structure your discussion. And so I know we have about 8 minutes left, and there is, quite a bit of content on the Fundraising Toolkit website, in the First Indiana, blog, where you can kind of look at structuring your why you do what you do, how you do it, and what you do. And then I also have this beautiful PowerPoint that I can absolutely share for further perusal. But I think at this point it would be really helpful to find out what sort of questions you have. So, Andy, John Dar, do we have any questions that have been in the chat at all?
I'll let Andy check for questions. I had a few questions that came in to me via email.
Okay.
Here's a question for you. You've been the Toolkit coordinator for over 7 years. What has been the record of success for teams using the Toolkit versus teams that don't?
I mean, that is a wonderful question, but would require me to have download data from First headquarters. So I don't have the information. What I can tell you is that the teams that put this to use and they leverage their network and they work with their students, I have found it to be very successful, but it's typically because there is a mentor who isn't doing the work, but they're coordinating the people around them to do the work.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Here's another one for you. We know that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to FIRST. What has been some of the most successful strategies for rural teams?
Selling hay bales. And so I say that, but literally, no, really, in the fundraising toolkit, we had a whole discussion with a local team that had received, I believe it was a set of donated hay bales, but then they went out and resold them, and that was one of the ways that they fundraised. And I thought that was very creative and unique. And so that was kind of one example where in these rural communities, there is industry and there are people out there that care about these kids and the skills that they're learning. We just need to, well, how I explain it is when you go out and fundraise, you're not bothering people. You are telling people about a program that they would 100% support, but they don't know about it yet. And that's really the mentality that you need to have there.
Wow. Andy, it looks like we've got a couple of questions coming in on the chat. Can you read a couple of those off for me?
Yeah, the first one I think Pete has a good one there. How far outside of your physical region should you be looking at?
So it's kind of funny when I get this question because it's like, well, if people who are right next door to you aren't leveraging these different engagements, then you might as well go, expand outside of your individual city and try to engage beyond that. And so typically what I would say, and if looking at Indiana, I'm assuming Ohio's similar. But if you look at your county, that's kind of generally a good range of engagement to look at. And it's also very dependent on if you're more locally or federally run. And so as an example, in Indiana, we have a township model. People are very proud of their individual cities. And so it's easy to start with like the mayor of your smaller city or the township. Whereas when I was in Milwaukee, it was like starting with Milwaukee as a large city, there was a lot of opportunity there from the urban perspective.
Danielle is one of our rookie coaches. She had a team that started up last year, but did not have the opportunity to participate. She's got a great question for you. Danielle, go ahead.
Hi. So like John Dar said, I'm coaching a rookie team in Cleveland. we were part of a program with Great Lakes Science Center, so we didn't do our own fundraising this past year. We didn't get started before COVID. And my students, we aren't allowed to meet in person, and I can't meet with pretty much any of my team members virtually. So how can we be successful with fundraising without me, the only coach for the team, having to do everything?
Well, I think this is a matter of delegating and managing. And so one of my questions is, are there other people who are involved with the team that, either believe in this program or maybe are champions of yours? So do you have role models or mentors in that area that you can go to and say, hey, I'm trying to change these kids' lives. Who can help me?
So we did have a strong team of mentors who really helped our team, that work with different industry partners who are already or did already contribute to the initiative. So I can try to ask them and see if they have external connections outside of what we already did. But again, that comes down to I'm ending up having to do a lot of that work or setting it all up. Like, is there some strategy without meeting with your team members? And I only have 13 kids, to not make it just my job.
I mean, my immediate responses are communicate with your students, which you've identified as a challenge. Communicate with the other mentors, which the mentor communication, that works, right?
Yeah, and email and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. So my recommendation there would be get on to a face-to-face like Zoom meeting or something like that, something very similar to this, and focus on like it's essentially a call to action, and you might need to work on your pitch a little bit. You are welcome to use the First Indiana Robotics breakdown of why we do what we do and how we do it.
Kind of entirely will.
Yep. But I think the most important part is you have a passion for this. You are here. You are listening. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. And thank you for supporting these kids. People care. And you just need to remind them that this is a, opportunity that will change these kids' lives, and they need access to it. And what are we each individually going to do to ensure that these kids have access to this equitable program? Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, we have a limited school community, and we're in a very large school district. So it's not like we can be like, okay, we're the Cleveland High School. We're one of 40 some high schools that all have different programs, all have different community partners, things like that. So it's kind of hard because I don't know every school and their community connections to industries and different things. So, I don't want to go poking at something that already has commitments, and especially in these times. To answer your question, Pete, teleconference can potentially happen, but our students' phone numbers change so often that it's not necessarily reliable.
Yeah.
So that it can potentially happen, but of my team, I've maybe heard of the 13 from 5 of them over the course of this extended closure.
That sounds like a great opportunity for us to talk about collaborating when we get to that section. Renee, I know that you're extremely short on time.
Thank you.
There was one last question that we were hoping that we'd be able to get in. I think that question came from Linda Hartman. She's got the last question for you tonight.
So our team is a community team versus a school team, and so that helps reduce. I mean, it makes it harder to do certain fundraisers, just because we don't have that. There's not a local Pizza Hut that all the kids go to after school, or by and says, "Oh, I got part of the school team." So, what are some suggestions for those situations?
Well, my instant suggestion is you're right. You don't have one Pizza Hut. You have all the Pizza Huts. So I would flip it on its head and say, yeah, you're a community-based team, but from all of those school partners, want to impact those kids. And so instead of looking at those smaller like dine and donate fundraisers and things like that, I would really encourage looking at some of those, like what is your community doing? What are your community needs? Who are the big players in your community? And really focus on those pieces. So I do need to jump off though to my next meeting. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely fantastic. I look forward, Andy, to hearing from you related to following up and sending over my materials that I shared.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day and rest of your meeting. Good luck with the brainstorming. I'm sure you guys will do well. And don't forget, you're not alone. We're all part of a FIRST community here. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Renee.
And folks, if you've got some questions for Renee, you've got her contact information. Again, Renee is the president of First Indiana Robotics. If you have a specific question that she wasn't able to answer for you tonight, you can reach out to her individually and she will definitely report back to you. Once again, thanks, Renee, so much for spending a little bit of time with us. And now, folks, it's time for tonight's brainstorming session. I've been excited about this particular portion all evening long. We were disappointed. I think all of us were disappointed by the news that there would be no support for off-season events this year. With First recycling this year's game for next season, there simply weren't any playing fields for any planned off-season events. As mentors, we've all come to rely on events like the Corey Invitational, the WOW Championship, and the Mahoning Valley Robotics Challenge, just to name a few, as a means to stay connected with our students and also as a great recruitment and training tool for new students as well as new mentors for our team. But clearly that's not something that we're able to do. And of course, that begs the question, what can we do during this off season to keep our teams connected and engaged? Now, recently, some of you have suggested holding a virtual tournament using some of the three-dimensional models that were made available by First this year from SolidWorks. In fact, some of you even suggested utilizing the XRC simulation system that was developed for the FTC. It is an amazing system, and you can do some extraordinary things with it. In conducting my research tonight, I discovered that the XRC simulator has already been updated to include this season's games for both the FTC and the FRC. In fact, we're watching some of that footage right now. Very, very cool. What's more, this system has already been used earlier this month to host an online tournament that was facilitated by our very next guest. Now, we are very excited to have with us a very good friend of mine, and he's here to tell us about the pros and cons of this system and how we might be able to facilitate an online tournament. He's the executive producer and host of First Updates Now, the long-running digital content provider that regularly features some of the latest and the most popular news, discussions, interviews, and events in the First robotics community. Please welcome my very good friend, Mr. Tyler Olds. Tyler, are you there? Did we lose you?
Hello.
There he
Hey,
is.
Tyler.
Am I here?
You're there.
All right. Sorry about that. Apparently, I have to unplug my microphone and plug it back in. So, but thank you for that very kind intro, Chandar. And I will say it's a pleasure to speak with you again and many others who are in this call that I didn't get to see this year. So it's great to be able to reconnect a little bit that way. Yeah, as Chandar mentioned, if you are not familiar, my name is Tyler Olds, the editor-in-chief of First Updates Now. We are the largest digital content producer that covers First out there, and we do a lot of different things. And one of them, in addition to doing shows and stuff, is that we've been partnering with the team called the XRC team, which I'm also a member of their committee and organization for. So I'm actually going to share my screen in a little bit, and John Dar showed a little bit in that video as well too. But I'll give a little bit of a synopsis of what XRC is if you're not familiar with it. Long story short is, imagine it is the arcade version of playing robotics. So it is an opportunity to play online multiplayer with, in FRC, for example, up to 6 players, 3 robots on each side. It is a very well-oiled system that has occasional glitch that is quite hilarious. And it's the whole goal was originally was to just bring different types of simulators. And the person who designed it, as John mentioned, started with FTC. We now have both FRC and VEX as well too available. I know we're not supposed to say that, but in FRC, it has really taken off for us, especially right after COVID hit. For things, in April, we ran a full tournament for this, where we had as many people watching this as what watched the regional. For things. So there's definitely a great opportunity out there to dive into this and do this. And while it is summertime, so of course we see lower engagement, like with the content we produce as well too. We'll definitely see lower engagement with that. There are great opportunities for areas to take this free software and do things with it. And we've at Fun, in collaboration with XRC, have really made this into a very, what I call streamable event, where we can provide things that people can actually watch and enjoy. We can commentate on it. We can run full tournaments. We can run alliance selections. We can have rankings, and we can do 5-minute match rotation. So let's do that in regular FRC, right? So I'm going to share a little bit of the screen, and you're going to have to bear with me because I have no clue how to share screens through WebEx, because I have not used this for quite some time. So maybe a little bit, I'm sure there's a button that says share screen somewhere. So let's do that.
Sure. Tyler, if you've got your pointer on your screen, you should see a series of buttons pop up. It'll be the one that looks like a box with the arrow coming out.
Okay. So, all right. So this is, hopefully you can see this now. This is the XRC simulator. So in general, as I mentioned, I'm going to run through just a couple brief things about it if you haven't seen it. If you want to see more, you can check out First Updates Now YouTube. Just search for like FRC simulator. We've done several hundred matches over a given period of time. But in general, as I mentioned, really what I'm going to talk about for your thing in particular is that there is a multiplayer function. Now, I can't show this right now because we're not running a server for things, so I'm going to jump into single player. But the goal of this, essentially, is to provide an opportunity on a well-represented field of what infinite recharge looks like and an opportunity to play. I'm actually using an Xbox controller right now. You can use your keyboard for things if you want to. You can use and pretty much any type of controller out there as well too. And this will actually play full-on simulated matches for things. You can have, as I mentioned, 6 players playing on here. There are 3 different robots currently that you can use for this. This robot right here is just called the FRC Shooter, very aptly named. And then very recently, 2 more robots were added. If you're familiar with the robot teams, one was Roboteers 2041 out of Illinois, and the other one was 125 the Neutrons out of Massachusetts. And as mentioned on here, I'm just going to click restart a match. This will actually count down a match. Now, the difference is obviously there is no autonomous mode. The first 15 seconds is just double the point values for things. So you'll notice that how the points score up on there. And we have a very fancy screen that's used for tournaments as well, too. If you're familiar with Chessy Champs, it looks very familiar with that, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. Robots can climb as well, too. It will count balances for things. As they go through at the end of the match, it would actually reflect the score. The couple things that don't work in this is the control panel is not a feature or function that works in this as much as you want to try for things. But in general, what this gives is a great opportunity, and I'm going to pop up another screen on here to show more of a match that John Dar was showing before. But this gives an opportunity for, as I mentioned, 6 players, and this is our interface that we're showing. I'm going to assume since I'm sharing screens, you can now see 6 robots competing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is a tournament that we ran, and once again, these are 6 robots competing with 6 players in different locations that are all on different teams that have just come together, and they get the play and enjoy it. And like I said, the key to this is I said, imagine this as an arcade, right? So is it going to do everything out there? Absolutely not. Is it going to be a lot of fun for people to do and something that they can get involved with? Absolutely, it will. And a couple cool things about this is scores for these a lot of times tend to be in the 3, 4, and 500s. because you're able to score more efficiently than what most of the robots out in the field can. But this is something that's really neat. I'm just going to real quick grab a couple questions that were, I know, kind of pre-sent, and if there's any others, I can take that as well. Last thing I'll say is that anybody can run this. You can run it as a server if you want. The only exception would be is they get like the full stream experience that we have out of it. We do have a couple more proprietary things that we've done to add on, like the Chesney Champ scoring on the bottom, that sort of thing, running alliance selections like in our own way. You can still do all this on your own. That's totally fine, but we do offer a little bit more. Fun is willing to, by the way, donate our time to make this happen. This is something you guys are interested in doing. We really want to help support the community, especially during this time for that. So just to reiterate, a couple of questions that were asked was how many players. So once again, you can set up alliances just like you do in FRC matches. We run a virtual version, essentially a matchmaking, and how FMS works for that, which sets a schedule and then you can play with. One other thing I'll mention, there are no referees in this. However, if you notice right now on screen, there's a red robot on the right-hand side of your screen that has a red circle around it. There's a timer on there that only allows you to contact robots in the wrong zone for a certain period of time. And if you do it too long, that red robot just reset there, and you can reset yourself again, and you get a penalty for that. So there are a little bit of differences from the actual game. Once again, imagine it as an arcade version. Technical requirements. I mean, it is a PC software, so keep in mind, so you can't play this on Xbox or anything like that right now. You can use an Xbox controller, but you can use a laptop, desktop. It does work on Apple as well too. There are a couple sometimes things that are wonky with it, but other than that, not too much for it. You know, you don't need a gaming PC or anything like that. You know, if you have an old computer, probably won't work that well, but in general, a normal laptop or desktop will work for this. And then the last thing somebody asked in regards to, can you load your own CAD representations? No, that is something on here that that is not available. Kind of the trade-off versus like doing the first one is that this is going to provide you interactive multiplayer and interactive scoring in ways that really make it feel like a first event. Is kind of the way to look at it. And John Dar knows that I've been an MC for a really long time. So my perspective on things has been to provide the best experience possible for stuff, right? I always think about like, hey, if I was in their shoes, what would I want to do? And to me, this provides a really cool interactive experience that, while of course it's not the real thing, provides something that can be very exciting and things that people can get excited about. So I'll take a pause there, and if there's any questions, John or anybody else, I can field those as well.
Sure. I think that there's some questions in the chat. Andy, do you see any that jump right out at you?
There are a couple of really good ones, but the last one that came up, and I pretty much I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is that the FTC game is also available, correct, Tyler?
Yes, that is correct. Skystone is currently available. It's actually the original for what it was. If you're in the FTC, it's very fun and it works quite well as well too. So you can definitely do the FTC game.
And
Tyler, I can bring that up, by the way, while the next question is being asked.
What kind of staffing does it require to host an online tournament like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we run an online tournament, we typically have a few. Let me bring up the FTC one while I'm doing that. We typically have a few different positions that we run for that. So we typically have somebody that handles the scheduling and kind of acts like a queuer, so to speak. We run everything through Discord for doing stuff. So we allow people to jump into, if you're not familiar with Discord, it's like Slack, or it's like a collaboration workspace that you can use, but people can can jump into Discord channels so they can chat with their alliance partners for things. So it makes it feel very real for that. We do have a referee because we do in XRC, we have a few set of written rules for things. You can, once again, do whatever you want for that stuff, but we have somebody that catches in case there's like contact during climbing or something like that. And then we have a couple of announcers, and then we have you will need a streamer or some sort of producer to stream the event as well too, because we, obviously people, if you want other people to see it, which I'm inferring you do, it provides something for other people to come and enjoy, and for people to watch while they're not competing as well. But that's really about it. I mean, really, most of the times we probably will run something with 3 to 5 people typically.
Okay. Other questions?
One of them was a general question about about fun first updates now. What other content are you guys live or otherwise are you guys providing on Twitch or YouTube to keep the kids engaged during this downtime?
Sure. So this is our downtime too, obviously, with things going on. And fun, by the way, the misconception is fun is unfortunately not my full-time job, first up, but we really do a lot that we want to give back to the community. So for us right now, we produce a weekly FRC show on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern called FRC Recap, where it's a news show with typically a guest. So for example, this past Tuesday, we had Tyler Holtzman, the coach of 2056 OP Robotics, Adam Hurd from Cheesy Poos 254 the week before. Next week, we're bringing on John Kentfield from AndyMark to talk about LGBTQ plus in FIRST. So things like that. Typically, we'll break down some news and headlines, bring on a guest discussion, and then we do a trivia thing. We also do create FTC content as well. That is typically every other week right now. So that's kind of our main off-season rotation, as we call it. Sometimes we'll have a few other shows. Sometimes we play games. Sometimes things like that. And then if you view us during the normal season, we create a plethora of YouTube content. Our biggest thing is called Behind the Bumpers, where we go and interview teams at events. We have about 80 people who help fund as contributors, and they just will be at events and interview teams. We do have some representation in the Ohio area, albeit I will admit it could be a little bit more for things, but yeah, we're definitely producing content year round. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube and Twitch, of course.
Outstanding. One last question for Tyler. Anybody out there?
By the way, I can try to work with these Skystone robots here, but I really don't remember any of the controls for things. So.
Hey,
but at least
I do have a question for Tyler. Can you hear me? Or
I can.
We're a new program. When I look around the county, there's probably 5 or 6 different schools that are really getting into robotics. I want to pull them in the first direction. And the one thing, very economically deprived, so people don't have a lot of money. But this is a golden opportunity. I know 4 or 5 different robotics coaches from different school districts that would take a look at a game like this, and this could be the catch. This could be what drags them in and gets them into first competitions. Is there a way that, like, they're doing other robotics competitions in different companies that are sponsoring them, basically VEX? Is there a way we could, I'd like to bring them in and say, hey, look, this is what's available. And I guarantee you their kids would love this. And we all teach, so we're worried about our kids at home, keeping them, motivated and saying, hey, guys, this is a way that if you learn, you're going to learn, you're going to discover. It's an opportunity to better life where you can get a job where you're not just going home. And I'm not being ignorant. If anybody ever worked McDonald's, I worked my way through college at McDonald's myself. But there's much more out there than just that job. Do you see where I'm going? Because as teachers in the county, this would keep the kids interested in robotics. But it's something that how would I get other schools involved?
So I maybe need to clarify. Are you asking in regards to the XRC simulator in general, or are you asking in regards to FIRST?
Both. I mean, either one.
Okay. So, I mean, as I mentioned, the XRC simulator is free to download. Anybody can use it for things. So there's no obstacle really for that, other than that you do need a computer. So there might be some limitations. The other limitation would be if you are talking to students and they're using a school computer, my guess is that there's going to be some restrictions in installing software on those computers. But past that, like I said, it's very open. We do actually have a couple Discord communities in regards to just separate tournaments that we run that are just, once again, anybody can join and play and become part of it. They can see what an event kind of looks like in a representation for things. I'm going to be honest with you, in regards to general FIRST, I'm probably not the best person to speak upon that. There's many other brighter minds in this room than myself on that who work for FIRST. I can probably give you a better answer than I can.
Once again, that sounds like a great opportunity for that roundtable discussion that we've got coming up.
Yep.
Are there any other questions here for Tyler while we've got him?
I said the big one. It looks like we might have gotten the link for it. Is say me being the senior mentor in Ohio, I want to set up a tournament or something, and I want to set up the server myself to be able to do some of this stuff. Do you have a location where I could download it to get it to set that up on my own? Or
Yep, both myself and Travis actually just put the link in chat for that. So I will say, from a server basis, you do need a good internet connection if you are going to host a server. So if if you have just like a normal home internet, sometimes that's okay, but ping or your trip time is very important in regards to hosting the server. If you're going to host a multiplayer server, we actually have servers purchased through Amazon Web Services to host servers for things to make that a much better option for that, because if other people are connecting to you, you're going to have to open up your TCP IP ports, that sort of thing, where there could be some, if you don't know who's connecting to you, there could be issues with that.
Right, I understand. That's why it's nice to have a little bit of a FAQ out there, that some way for us to be able to pull it and at least maybe even do something local, even if we did something like that. So thank you for that information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as always, thank you, Tyler, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and to share some of the things that you've got going on. This looks really, really cool, and I'm sure that we'll be talking to you in the days or the week ahead to discuss how we might take this and move to the next level. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Tyler Olds, executive producer and host of First Updates Now.
Real quick, thank you so much, Chandar. I just want to give a quick plug real quick. Somebody asked before in regards to content. Yeah, if you're interested in watching content, we are not an official First program, but as I mentioned, we're the largest content producer. So we'd love featuring your teams and stuff too. So if you have something cool for your team that you want featured, reach out to us. We'd love to help feature you guys as well.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
Tyler, thank you so much. And now, mentors, it's time for that roundtable segment that we've been talking about. Tonight's two featured speakers certainly gave us a lot to think about tonight. And here's your chance to openly discuss some of what you've heard and talk about ways that you can implement some of the ideas that you have on your own. Tonight's discussion topic is opportunities for collaboration. And we hope to start a conversation that will identify possible areas for collaboration on a local, on a statewide, and even on a WOW district level. Our ultimate goal is to develop a series of successful strategies that we can use for cooperation. Now, of course, before we begin, there are some important ground rules. First and foremost, please make sure that you're practicing gracious professionalism. Just a reminder, please make sure that you mute your mic when you aren't speaking. And of course, please make sure that you give everyone a chance to share their thoughts and ideas. And as always, you're welcome to use the chat to share your ideas and questions if you're uncomfortable with speaking on the mic. And now, if you're ready, let's go ahead and begin.
I'm going to say one thing real quick before I let everybody else talk. I generally sit in the background and just let you guys go at it, because that's what I enjoy the best. It helps me figure out what we need to do from a higher level. But I also want you to know that we do have FTC and FRC coaches and mentors on here, and I believe there's an opportunity in the state of Ohio and around the region for us to work together in the programs, because there are FTC teams out there, phenomenal FTC teams out there that have been doing their programs and have ideas that FRC can use, and vice versa. I think there's a missed opportunity that our FRC and FTC teams don't work together enough. So that's one of the big things I want to make sure everybody understands, and that we're a community that I feel that we can be working together between those two programs. Okay.
Agreed. Why don't we start with this question? What are some of the ways that your team is already collaborating with other teams, FRC and FTC teams, in your local area? Who's got an answer for me?
Oh,
I'm not going first.
Let me speak on behalf of Danielle,
well,
because
and
she was about to say something. Go ahead, Danielle.
we're very lucky with the robotics initiative through the Great Lakes Science Center. All 5 of the Cleveland teams were able to collaborate. I imagine had we not have COVID and everything, that collaboration would have expanded and grown a lot more. But that's something we have the advantage of, at least being all in the same district and having come together and all formed at the same time. So that's at least something that we have. Even though we're all rookies, we at least have each other to rely on.
If I could,
Please go right ahead.
team room for the collaborating community. Just a very tight knit room that we could load content in. We could sponsor conversations. We had regular meetings in, share calendars, share information, and that itself was very, very helpful, I think, in terms of communicating with the teams. So that might be something useful for your collaboration efforts.
Very cool. And again, that was using Microsoft Teams as a way to stay connected, to share information, and to interact with one another, and also to respond to requests for information, equipment, supplies, material, and other resources that might be out there. Kathy Allen,
Hello.
what kind of collaborations have you and your team set up in your local area or outside of your local area?
Right now we're holding Zoom meetings every week with the kids. We're still continuing to meet. Also, we're doing a Super STEM Saturday virtual class here at the end of the month for upcoming kids in Tinkercad to get them in. We're trying to think of things to keep our name out there, to keep, I don't know how to explain, just to keep us in the community, because, we've been so lucky with in the last 3 months, we've had businesses give us $25,000 just in the last 3 months. And we just want to keep, helping out in the community and staying in the community.
Okay. Let's talk specifically about how we can support each other, support other teams, including FTC and FRC collaborations. Michael Rudder, you're with us here tonight. Can you think of some ways that you might be able to partner not only with teams that are within your program, but also for teams outside of your program as well?
That's a good question. I really hadn't thought about, because our team does a lot of collaboration. We frequently invite other teams to come practice with us, especially we try to reach out to some of the newer teams. But we've never really done anything with FRC yet. And I think part of the problem there is in the area of Ohio, we are in Lake County, Ohio, there's not a whole lot of FRC teams close by. And then the seasons are kind of offset. They're just ramping up, and then their build season, well, we're making our push to the end. So really, probably the best collaboration time would be summertime. And now that I say that, I think, well, one of our big summertime events has been our local Strawberry Festival, and we've always invited FRC teams. We've had a couple different FRC teams come out for that. So I guess I just answered my own the question, which is, think about your off-season events, especially summertime, when you're trying to do that community outreach and getting together with FRC teams or, the teams from the other programs to bring them in, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to show what FIRST is to the public, and being able to show not just what you do, but, what some of the other things are, including FRC, FTC, and even FLL and Junior FLL.
And Michael, what part of the state are you in?
I'm in Northeast Ohio, so Lake County. So we're east of Cleveland, spitting distance from the Lake Erie.
Okay. Looking for some opportunities to make some connections here. Great. Let's see. Jimmy Nichols is with us. Jimmy is with the FRC. Jimmy, where are some possible areas for collaboration?
So we've done a lot of collaboration over the years. Our team's coming into its 19th season, so we've partnered with other FRC programs in the region. We've provided practice space. We've partnered with other teams with their practice space. We actually were working on setting up a practice field right after Miami Valley with 3266 Eaton Robotics. Robots Are Us. Right when everything hit, we'd actually transported carpet and started to set up the field when everything started getting canceled. We've also had some FTC teams come into our space in order to get some advice on their strategy, and we'd help them strategize and make parts and stuff like that. So we've tried to do as much as we can locally and in this region. And then, you know, we're hoping to we're starting to kick off efforts to grow our board of directors for our 501c3 so that we can actually start making more strides towards the Paul George STEM Learning Center that we want to build, that will be a resource in the region to not only be a home for 1038, but it also be a place for other teams. We'll have a full-size practice field. It'll be for other teams to be able to come in and use it for workshops, FTC and FRC alike. So,
Wow, that sounds great. It really does. Let's see, Linda Bowman. What program are you with? Perhaps we lost Linda. Joshua is with us. He's one of our guests, and I believe that this may be the first time that you've joined us, Joshua. Where do you see opportunities for collaboration? I think you might be on mute there, Joshua. I think we can hear you now, Joshua. Ideas for collaboration. Joshua, I think we're having trouble with your audio. You might want to go ahead and just use the chat feature. We'll come back to you and check on you here in just a moment. Jennifer is with us, and Jennifer, the question that I have for you are: what areas would you like to see more collaboration?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
I would say, I mean, I know for me, we started in our urban school district with 4 teams that were started by a grant from our school district, and after 2 years, 3 of the teams dissipated, and we were the only team left standing in our school district. And so for us, like, we've had some collaboration with a team out in Newark, you know, and so we've had some community building where we had the opportunity to go and showcase robots with them. And so I think being able to have those types of opportunities, but I think really it's more about knowing who to contact, knowing who to actually get in touch with to make those connections. I think is my biggest struggle, as you know, I'm teaching full time and I'm doing this robotic stuff in addition to that. And so for me, it's trying to figure out, how do I get my kids in touch with those other students at other schools and other programs in order to be able to make sure they're continuing to collaborate and I'm not the one that has to do all of that connecting.
You know, it's a big state. We've got lots of teams scattered all throughout the state. Are you an FTC team or an FRC team?
I'm an FTC team.
Gotcha, FTC. And you say that you're working with some teams in the Newark area. Are you from that part of Ohio?
Oh, we're from Columbus, Ohio. So we're from Columbus City Schools in Columbus, Ohio. So we're the only FTC team out of Columbus.
Ah, I see.
But I know that, like, you know, I know that there are other school districts like Dublin and whatever around us that have teams, but it's one of those, like, the reaching out, because I'm not sure who to collaborate with or who to contact to make those connections for my students. So that's what I think I would like help with is is being able to provide those connections so the kids can continue to collaborate with other teams.
So very quick plug. Since you are located in the Columbus, Ohio region, I actually represent the alumni group at The Ohio State University. We are a pretty big group, and if you would like to reach out to us for any type of resources or help, you can reach out at firstrobotics@osu.edu. We'd be more than willing to send mentors and send any potential resources your way.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Very, very cool. Thanks, Derek. Other ideas? Anyone else?
What was that email address again?
So it is firstrobotics@osu.edu, and you can find more about our website at firstrobotics.osu.edu.
Very cool. Anyone else? Other ideas, other ways or areas that are ripe for collaboration?
Yeah, I had just a question or a suggestion. This is something that happened through a different robotics group, but we had a professional development day for teachers, and it was sponsored. And you go and you get what's called CEUs, and that gave us, like, literally, we got to know each other. We could sit down, we could talk, we could collaborate. And it really worked well. And I think it'd be a step in the right direction if First would do something like that, where, if you had a day or a weekend where you kind of brought everybody together. It might not be good timing for it right now with the C19, but in my area, there's about 7 or 8 schools represented, and then 3 or 4 other schools heard about it and said, can we send people? And boom, now we got a county tournament, and it's like, it's intense. There's kids at each school want to go and compete. Do you think you guys could sponsor anything like that?
Dan, where are you located at, Dan?
East Palestine, Ohio. We're south of Youngstown, north of East Liverpool, right on the PA border. Right now, robotics in our area, it's going to get. I'd say if we didn't have the C19, next year would have been a big time. I mean, a lot of schools involved in growing, but I'm kind of worried how everything will play out. We did host a tournament this year, and I talked to different coaches, and they kind of said, well, first, we don't know what exactly is expected. And I said, yeah, I get it. Give me a year or two. But the one thing that we all agreed upon, what drew us all into the other one, was they had like a professional development day, and everybody got together, and there were 3 or 4 different people that were saying very basics. Here's what the parts that you need to buy to start off with. Here are the steps that you want to take. And, when you've got a bunch of teachers in the same room and you kind of can see how everything's organized, my God, it really helped me out.
Very cool. I'm sure that we can find some folks that are out in your area that can help facilitate something. I think you have to partner with a college or university in order to find a way to provide professional development credit. But we could certainly, I'm sure that we've got some opportunities for collaboration in your general area where we could set up an Explorer Day where teachers and students would have a chance to learn about both the FRC and the FTC and get a chance to see and operate some of the robots that are there.
With COVID and everything, and with the limiting factor of some schools can't sponsor teachers to travel and attend PDs, would something virtual be able to be possible as well? Obviously, physical would be better with hands-on experiences and things like that.
Yeah,
but
very well
a
said.
virtual thing be possible for things to be set up?
Yeah.
Actually, I said I was listening to what Dan was saying. Daniel, you're right on spot. To be able to get out there, I know, and there's some different things that can be done along that lines. Let me see what I can do, and maybe we can get something set up. Even if it's something, even if it's a virtual thing to be able to show off what First is and what we can do. And I know there's some education stuff coming out of First as well that we might be able to throw out there as well.
And that, especially for Cleveland Metro Schools, obviously we started FRC teams. If we also can rope in the interest in FTC teams. A lot of elementary schools, our K-8 schools in the district, are kind of embracing the STEM. If some of those schools can also have that, that can be a connection between our elementary schools and our high schools in our district that can also provide support for each other, give the high school students the ability to go back to, say, their elementary school that they came from, or one of the elementary schools in the district, and create that conversation between FTC and FRC.
And it's important with the teacher development to not forget about First Lego League. That's where there's a lot of teachers that are thrown into that are not STEM professionals and get freaked out.
I did forget about Lego.
I would agree, Nathan. I would agree. That's how I started out.
But I think also one of the challenges with getting that kind of content is connecting the people with the knowledge to the audience. There's a lot of people on this call that are like me who aren't professional teachers, and there's a lot of professional teachers. And so it's hard. I have a lot of experience as a First Tech Challenge mentor. I volunteered at the Palestine event. It was a good event. And if you get me an audience, I can present content.
Well, we can find a way to create some online content that we could look for a host for. So good to know that that's an opportunity. And we also have a number of teams that are out there, both FTC teams and FRC teams throughout the state that have begun developing content that they could share with not only members of their team, but with also other students, not only in the state of Ohio, but around the world. And being able to take some of those things, make folks aware of them, and then develop content and share that content is also another opportunity for great collaboration, where we could have students from different teams, even teams from different programs, that could work together to put together some type of educational tool to help other teams to grow within the program.
We can share that information with the state partners too, for FTC and FLL, because they have content. They typically run camps in the summer. This year obviously is a little different, but they have material, and we can share that kind of request with them and see what they do have. There's also another senior mentor in the state. Andy isn't the only one. Andy works with all the programs, but spends a lot of time with FRC, and Jeff Richards spends a lot of time with FTC and FLL as much as you, Andy?
Yeah. So we both do. We're both pretty high on the FLL side of it.
Yeah.
Jeff's biggest focus is on the FTC side. I'm more FRC side, but when it comes to the younger programs, we go either direction. And at the same time, was just looking at the first website because I know they do certified professional development for teachers, and I will look into that as well to see if there's something we could do for the state of Ohio. I could talk to some people at First Education to see what we can do for professional development within the state.
Yeah.
At the team level, it's common everywhere, and these are recorded everywhere as well. It's just finding them and getting them in the hands of people that don't know they exist. But it's common for teams to come together physically and have workshops where they have students and mentors presenting on different topics, a variety of topics across the spectrum and all that. So in addition to anything at the first level and online content and everything, which is great, just having the social connections of arranging in-person workshops. These are held, we have meetings for FLL and all this stuff where people come together and learn about things, ask questions and everything. You could do that in general for different topics of interest. I don't think we do that at the FRC level. From a statewide or WOW-wide position, we've never done that as far as having our own workshops where we present people of experience and all that come in. This is a great start virtually to bring in other, people online, but eventually we could connect in person as well
So
and record it.
So first in Indiana and a lot of different states who have districts within this COVID time have been doing some virtual just meetings, I guess. So for example, first in Indiana has done a 5-day session where they brought in people from First, people from AnyMark, people from local teams to just talk and discuss about random ideas and topics related to First. So if we think that might be a good idea to bring to Ohio, it's really going to increase our collaboration between all of our different teams in WoW in general. So.
And that's really been the intent of this. So if you have things you want to hear about, it can be arranged. I mean, one of the reasons we had Renee is because people had wanted to have a better understanding of what tools were out there for sponsorship. So if you have thoughts on things you want to hear and people you'd like to hear from, we would love to know what that is and continue it.
I don't want to lose the professional day discussion without at least focusing on what we can do to make that happen and why we would do that. It seems to me that what we were talking about was a method to get more teachers and more schools engaged in First programs, which is really the objective here, right?
Yes, definitely.
So content's not our problem. We have lots of content. What is our problem?
Our problem it's organizational, and I know at the state level for the state of Ohio, I know we've had people that go to the State Board of Education meetings and present First to that level, right? They're presenting that to the board of ed people and to the principals and the superintendent level.
Yep.
I don't think we're getting to the teacher level, and a lot of the teachers, and I see this, I said I am not an educator, as most of you know, I am not an educator. By no means, but my wife is, and I've been around education for 30 years. So I do understand there's how that educational system works. And I know that first we have to make sure that we have the content and be able to get out there, whether it's professional development, where they're getting those certified credits. So there's an incentive there. So there's an incentive there to come and listen to us versus just us creating a program and introducing people to First. So there's two different ways we can go with this in that realm, and I can work with First on what we can do to get that certified training program going in the state of Ohio. And we can start working on that, as well as we can develop a program that we can put out there and say, Pete, if you have a school district or you have somebody that you want us to come in and talk, say we could come into Cleveland, and I could say, hey, we could set up a date. We come in, I could bring in a presentation and talk to, about the programs and what First is from the ground up, right? Because I have that ability. I can talk about First until I'm blue in the face. And we give them that, but there's a big difference between talking to the educators on that professional development side versus talking to them about, hey, this is a program that's out there and it's available and it's educational. That's something you can do in your school system. There's two different sides of that puzzle.
Yeah, like in Iowa, we worked with Northern Iowa to develop a 2-credit curriculum for FRC. But that could be certifiable because they are a university with an education program. So they could, tuck it into their education school.
So speaking from Cleveland, since Andy, you used us as the example, I don't know if this is the same for other school districts, but we have in our school calendar school development days set aside where students don't attend school, teachers do, and we have them every single quarter throughout the school year. So if something were set up and offered, so like I know our science focused educational program person. She's 7 through 12 is her focus in our district, to get that information out to science teachers, because our district, and I'm sure this is kind of similar across Ohio, our district is pushing projects, are pushing project-based learning or capstone projects, and focusing it around Lego League or FTC, and then in high school FRC, kind of building that in and building that up around the STEM programming could be a great opportunity to give teachers something they otherwise would have no idea what to do, and both do the professional development along with, here's this program, if you are serious about it, here's how you get into it, and then here's this community for the entire state that are resources.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well, I can tell you that in the northeastern part of the state, in the greater Cleveland area, we've got a location, a great location. Once we're free to freely move and travel around to be able to facilitate some type of professional development. And even while we can't, we can still create some opportunities to create some online content, to do virtual meetings, or even to record some meetings and can be played back at another time. And again, that's something that we would be happy to do, that we would be certainly willing to do. It sounds like Derek, that's something that you guys might be interested in there in the central part of the state. And if you'll make sure that you put down your contact information, I want to reach out to you to see how we can coordinate some things of that nature. And then if we've got another educational facility at the college or at the university level and the southern part or even the southwestern part of the state, then perhaps we can arrange to do a similar type of workshop in those locations as well.
Yeah, I think ideally we'd want this across the entire state at some point, right, but we have to start somewhere. So, certainly let's get started in Cleveland. I think we have enough of a basis here. We also know that there are some significant obstacles that we have to address in order to make first something institutional in Cleveland. And these are things that are even beyond the school system. We have to find some way to deal with these issues. And this internet access issue is enormous, okay? But, we're trying to find ways around that. We have solutions in mind. So let's try it in Cleveland. Do we have Columbus that wants to step up into this too?
Yeah, we have folks in Columbus. I have Derek at OSU is definitely a big advocate to help us out in Columbus. I know Derek will help us in Columbus.
For
sure. So I know I've got that.
Volunteered.
Very cool.
Is Jimmy Nichols online still?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hey, Jimmy, did you guys try this in the Cincinnati Dayton area?
We have not. I'm not an educator. I'm an engineer, so I'm not as familiar with the professional development days around the school system. So, as far as I know, nothing down here like that has been tried.
Okay, well, maybe it's something that we start here, and once we develop the approach, we can transfer. But we're going to need some educators from Cincinnati, because honestly,
you got Dave Campbell, you got Andy Trinello from 4028. I mean, there are educators down here that are involved in FRC and in teams, so they're down here. They're just not on the call right now.
So we'll get this topic in future calls then, right, John Dar?
Absolutely. And Jimmy, if you could reach out to Dave, let him know what we're talking about here, and
sure, definitely.
We can start moving in that direction. Try to move that ball along. We got about 5 minutes, folks. About 5 minutes left, so we need to start wrapping up this particular section. We've talked so far about collaboration. We've looked at some ways that we could do more things with the FTC and the FRC combined. We've talked about professional development days, and sounds like something that we're going to move forward with. I can tell you that something that I've heard people talk about once or twice, particularly at our FRC regional events, is during part of that event to bring in some of our FTC teams, and we do that already. We bring them in. They have a showcase, but we'd like to bring them front and center, and we're trying to talk about ways that we might be able to bring in a field, set the field up near the FRC plant, so we have all eyes in the arena on the area, and to be able to talk about the FTC, what the FTC does, have a chance see a match or two there on the big screen. And that might be some fun ways to get more people involved and to let them know that that First is a big tent with lots of folks there. So some things to talk about. There are opportunities for collaboration with fundraising, in design, with robot building, with program coding, and even with outreach. There are plenty of opportunities that are out there. It's up to us to begin to reach out to one another and find out how we can help one another. And even though the FTC and the FRC are different programs underneath the FIRST umbrella, many of the same principles for all of these programs, like fundraising and design, many of the same principles apply to both programs. In fact, apply to all 4 programs underneath the FIRST umbrella. So ways that we can involve them to see some of those things is a great way to tie everybody in. Andy, you were about to say something?
So I've got something I want to say with regards to just collaboration as well. So one thing that our alumni group at Ohio State has been doing, and this is just something that I want to just briefly discuss about, maybe in the next meeting, if you could allow our alumni group to talk more about it. As some of you might have known, I've been kind of spamming the Slack and Discord channels a little bit with regards to the First National Advocacy Conference. This has traditionally been a advocacy conference taking place at Washington, D.C. for the past 7 years. It was originally started by FRC Team 27. One of their school board members decided to go up to Washington, D.C., and soon enough, they became a Hall of Fame team. So this conference has traditionally trained over 1,500 kids to talk to the members of Congress and advocate to expand FIRST to underserved and underrepresented populations. This year specifically, it's been a virtual conference. But one of the things that our alumni group, and eventually I'll actually reach out to a lot of our Central Ohio teams as well, that we're trying to do is to bring to Ohio the Ohio First Advocacy Conference. So this is something I just want to initially bring up since we don't really have much time left. I do want to spend more time to talk about this initiative to all of you at this chat, as well as the rest of the people in Ohio. I've talked to Jeff Richards about it, who was another first senior mentor. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and share the link to the First National Advocacy Conference, which actually has another virtual session this upcoming Saturday, and they're going to talk about financial stuff. Looks like they're going to talk about what does FIRST do for advocacy, state advocacy efforts and successes. But if you're interested in signing up for this event, I'm going to go ahead and send you the link right now. That's pretty much it.
Thanks so much, Derek. And I can see that we will be reaching out to you in the future for a future mentors meeting to make an official presentation to each and everybody here. Just about out of time here, everybody, but I did want to take a moment and to thank everybody for a great roundtable discussion. We'll begin looking at how we can implement some of these ideas in days and of course the weeks ahead.
Just, John Dar, a quick comment. Is there an appetite to meet in July? We had at one point talked about maybe taking a month out and not meeting in July, but starting up again in August. If we were to offer a session in July, is there enough interest to attend that?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, folks, you can certainly respond by entering a yes or no in the chat there.
Where's the chat room from here?
Looks like there might be some interest there.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I had no problem putting something together again for next month. I have no problem with that. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't, inundating with everybody But I don't have a problem. As long as there's interest with you guys, I have no problem doing this on a monthly basis. And I really definitely hope that we can continue to do this throughout the year. And this just isn't a COVID thing. This is a way for us to get together as coaches and mentors, get us a chance to get our voice out there, get your concerns out there, and maybe, you know, it said enough people get together that we're there. So that's you know, get us your info, get us your questions. I have no problem. We set it up, and you know, like Derek is asking about. I'd love to bring this topic up. Definitely, I understand that this one is this weekend, but we have a meeting with the teams coming up next week. Love to be able to get that kind of content out in front of the kids next week as well.
That, by the way, started as an FRC initiative. It is now an FRC FTC initiative. So that's no longer exclusive to FRC.
Very cool.
Yep.
Susan, I know that we're running really short on time. In fact, I think we might be just a minute or so over. Were there any updates that you had for our mentors while we had them here?
The only thing I really have is that the registration system is open, so you can go in and update your mentor changes, mentor contact information, anything like that that needs updating for your team. I would tell you, Jimmy went in and flew through his YPP background. We're getting like hours turnaround. So if you want to, if you're due for an update, it's the time to do it.
That's the time to do it, huh?
YPP was a good one to run through again this year. I was like, I got 11 for 11 out of my questions. I did good.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, folks, before we forget, we want to remind you that Ohio First needs your help. If you've got an idea for a show or a topic that you'd like to discuss, or if you are, if you or somebody that you know is interested in being one of our featured speakers, we definitely want to hear from you. Please take a moment, post your ideas and your contact information in the chat, or you can always contact Mr. Andy Yantes directly at the email address that's there on your screen right now. And again, that's AYANTES at firstinspires.org. Again, we're a little bit short on time, but we do want to remind you that we have some great shows that are upcoming. Mentors, be sure to encourage your students on your team to join us next Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern for the FRC Virtual Roundup. Now, we have shifted from a weekly meeting to a monthly team meeting, and we have a new day and time, but Virtual Roundup will still feature more of what our students have been asking for. That's more first updates, engaging student-led presentations, informative tips and techniques, and more of those great roundtable discussions that seem to that everybody is asking about. All that, plus we've got trivia prizes, lots of fun. And again, the fun starts at 8 o'clock. That'll be next Thursday. Now, we had planned on going on vacation, but it sounds like you guys are really interested in getting back together again next month. Andy, do you know what that third Thursday in July would be? Don't have my calendar open, so don't have that information.
It looks like it would be the 16th of July. The 16th would be our date for another mentor meeting. So we'll look at that.
Okay.
The other thing, there was a question that popped up, and I want to make sure people do understand this. And a few things that I found out since I did my regrant. If you have money in your first account, they of course want you to issue a regrant before the end of the month. That's before the end of June. Okay. But if you would like that money to stay in your account, you need to contact first, and they will go to whomever gave you the money and see if they're allowed to hold it over before you regrant it. I found that out after I did my regrant. So I want to make sure that you guys, you do understand that if you do have money in your first account, they want you to regrant that before the end of the month, because that's of course the end of their fiscal year for first.
All right, thanks, Andy. That's a great update. Once again, a reminder, make sure that you don't miss these shows. FRC Virtual Roundup next Thursday, and our next monthly mentors meeting will be on Thursday, July 16th. And again, that'll be at 8 p.m. That'll be an adults only meeting just for us. It's a program that's put together for mentors, by mentors, and we want to keep it as relevant as possible. So please make sure that you're able to join us. In wrapping up, Ohio First would like to thank tonight's distinguished guest. That would be Renee Becker-Blau, president of First Indiana Robotics, and of course Tyler Oles. He was the executive producer and host of First Updates Now. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank each of you, the many FRC and the FTC coaches and mentors who joined us from across the region. We certainly couldn't do it without you, and we invite you to come back next month for another great meeting. Tonight's edition of Mentors Roundtable was presented by Ohio First with technical support provided by your buddy, Andy Antes, with research and logistical support being provided by Susan Lawrence. Additional in-kind support provided by First Field Operations, a Midwest office, the Great Lakes Science Center, and of course, Cisco Systems. Now, remember to join us next Thursday night. That's 8 o'clock for FRC Virtual Roundup. And on the behalf of all of us at Ohio First, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Mentors Roundtable. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.